Hi, hello everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for tuning into our Facebook Live event. We do have some people already on, so we're really excited to hopefully answer some of your questions. We have Ryan Klingensmith with me. Thank you so much for joining me today.
And thanks for having me.
So, Ryan, you have it's an organization called Shape the Sky.
Right.
Can you kind of introduce yourself to everyone, let them know who you are and your background a little bit?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I do a lot of work in schools through the Student Assistance Program, trying to mentor some kids and get them connected to services if they need it. I've spent about 17 years in direct care working with adolescents and children that had mental health issues.
All right, and so we're on Facebook Live. I can see your comments here. So if you guys have any questions, again, today we are discussing social media, bullying, mental health. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions as parents. This is a conversation that we're starting to hopefully get people talking and maybe promote some kindness. That would be nice, right?
Very good. Uh-huh.
Okay, so we do have some questions first off. And so we're going to start. We asked on our Facebook page, we asked you guys to submit some questions earlier. So Diana is asking about a way to mediate your child's social media. What kind of indicators as a parent, should they be watching for?
Well, I think to monitor a child's social media and technology is very important. If you think about when I was growing up, and Amanda too, I'm sure, there was the phone and it was attached to the wall.
Right.
So, if you were having a conversation with a friend on it and it started to go south, your parent would hear that and turn around and look at you and say, hey, what's going on here? Like, don't talk to them like that, or whatever the situation is, they're hearing it and they're able to see it. And it's a visible thing. So if you were trying to look something up on that phone and it was a little bit questionable and the parent could see it, they'd say, hey, wait a minute, what are you looking up there? Or, if you were trying to take a picture of yourself and making goofy faces and send them through that phone or wall-mounted phone, a parent could be like, hey, why are you doing that? But now all those behaviors are on a phone or an iPod or some tablet that aren't necessarily in a parent's view. Mm-hmm. So that can make it a lot more difficult for a parent to understand, what their child's doing. So, being part of the conversation and like setting some rules to begin with, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but setting some rules I think is very important, but also constantly monitoring it. If your child has a piece of technology, you should have the same type of technology so you understand how all the safety settings and functions work. If your child has Instagram, you should have Instagram so you understand how it works and follow them. If they have Snapchat, you should be on Snapchat too, so whenever they have a question or you can see what's going on with them, or you can kind of dip in and check on their behavior. You kind of have to monitor. It's almost like being that parent in the hallway when we were growing up, seeing what we were doing on the phone attached to the wall, but now
listening on the other end.
Right, listening on the other end. Very good. Forgot about that, right? But you kind of have to do that, but you have to stick yourself in there because now those devices are on the bus. It's in school, it's in the bedroom, it's all over the place, and it's a lot more difficult to control that.
Absolutely, and I will take that moment to tell everyone about. You come to schools, and I actually attended one of these last year. You went to Altoona. You go to schools all over the place, and you hold these seminars for parents because even I have a hard time understanding all the new apps and what's going on. It's constantly evolving, and you kind of keep up with that to help educate parents.
Right. Yes. Shape the Sky is kind of we have an online presence where we're giving you resources that you can go there to help be a good digital parent. But also part of my mission is going out into the community, whether it be to a teacher group, a community group, a parent night, law enforcement, counselors. I'm doing a teacher training tomorrow at Tyrone for all the teachers there because, I want to make sure that I give parents really good information, like the latest, what's going on, and going into schools and working with kids and telling them that I do these trainings. They find it's really funny that I'm talking to 200 parents about Snapchat, but the best thing about that is they're like, hey, have you heard about this app? Because this is what the kids are doing on it. So, there's the parents are over here and the kids are over here, and the part of the training organization is to pull parents in, kind of give them an understanding why they have to parent differently. Like the world we grew up in isn't there anymore. So we can't parent our kids the way we were parented. Like the things that worked for us as parents or as children from our parents, we're probably using with our kids. We're saying the same things, correcting them the same way, but my parents didn't tell me about Snapchat or Instagram
Right.
or being kind on my personal phone in my bedroom. So we don't have a basis to like teach them that. So we really need that information and those resources, and that's part of Shape the Sky's mission, is to provide contracts and resources and tabs and the best resources out there for parents to like keep up with their kids on this stuff.
All right, so Ryan, we have another question, and I believe this one is from Matthew.
Sure.
Right? You said, so there, of course, is a lot of recommendations about what happens if your child is a bully, but what if you have a child that is the actual bully?
Right. So that's a good question. So, there's a lot of information out there what to do if my child's being bullied or cyberbullied. But what do I do if that's my child? And I think that's a really important thing. Now, I don't profess to be the expert of bullying or cyberbullying. I don't do research. I'm kind of motivating people to look at the world a little bit differently. But when I do that, I try to use the best resources that are out there. The Cyberbullying Research Center is a website that's hosted by a couple doctorate level professors that research cyberbullying and research the best methods to intervene with them. On my website, I have a link to their website under the Cyberbullying Resource tab on my website, but they have these great resources that are, printable, they're downloadable, they're free, but this one, in regards to that question, is like, what's it say? What to do when your child cyberbullies others. So there's a top 10 list here of, step by step, what you should do if your child's doing the cyberbullying. There's other ones on there as well, what to do when your child's being cyberbullied, and a lot of other ones. There's resources for parents, for teens, and for teachers. So it's a really good place. So I'm trying to get everybody to the right place where those resources are.
Wonderful. And so we are getting some people talking on
Okay.
Facebook. Let me see what we have here. Let's kind of talk about mental health a little bit.
Sure.
I think a part of that too is as a parent, kind of having a healthy relationship and understanding your child as well. So, tell me how important it is to kind of talk with your child about what healthy relationships are, maybe.
Absolutely. And I think it starts from a very young age, what makes you feel good and what doesn't make you feel good. And, take those opportunities where you see something kind happening in the community or in the school and talk about that and how good that is. Because then when something happens that doesn't feel good, then they're more likely to come talk to you about that and ask some questions. And being a role model for that as well, I think is really important. So, with my kids are 8 and 11, and we're constantly having those conversations. How was your school today? And not just saying how was school today, but like tell me something you saw that was kind today. Something that one of your friends did that was kind, or a teacher did that was kind, or tell me something fun that happened today. It's not just about like, how'd you do on your math test? Now, sure, we have those conversations, but also we want to hit on those emotional parts too, those social emotional parts, like how did you feel coming out of school today? Did something fun happen? Did anything not so fun happen? Did anything happen that made your tummy feel a little weird or something like that? So it starts from a young age. One of the schools that I work in, it's middle school, and you've got 5th through 8th grade. And I have to tell you, a lot of changes happen from 5th to 8th grade. But you come to school in 5th grade, and you're all excited about school, a little nervous, but by the time you leave in 8th grade, your hair's purple. So, like, a lot changes between 5th and 8th grade. And, like, navigating those waters, and your child might not always be there ready to talk to you about this stuff, but they need to know that you're there ready to provide those resources on their terms. And like, hey, when you're ready to talk about that, you let me know. I'm always here for you, and I'm ready to help you understand healthy emotional health, but also what it looks like when you need a little bit of help, what those red flags are, and what that means. And you can pull those off many different websites when you go to talk to kids, but having those conversations are key.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I never really thought about what was something kind today.
Right.
How does that make you feel? I definitely remember getting the questions, how'd you do in school today, or how was your day? But really asking those emotional questions. And I think that if you do that from a young age, it becomes normal. And then talking about your emotions and how you're feeling, it normalizes it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know for a lot of people, that's not something that you're used to talking about.
Yeah, well, my kids both have counselors as parents, so we're always asking those questions.
Yeah.
So they're pretty used to it now, but I think it's really good to have those conversations, and it doesn't have to be an in-depth conversation, but just how'd you feel today?
That's right. So I'm looking here.
Sure thing.
See if we have any more questions. Let's see. So one person wants to know, Jocelyn wants to know, who should a child or parent go to if another student is being bullied? And I would assume, like, if you're a child, maybe start with your parents first, do you think? Or?
Right. Yeah, so that's a good question. Absolutely, because, the bystander is the one who stops the bullying, because the bully is the person with the power, and the person being bullied is the one with some kind of, not the power, so to speak, whatever form that is. But the person who sees this, whether it's in person or online, the bystander has the power, okay? Because if they're perceived in a different social status, they can step in and say, stop that, that's not cool, and that might work. It might end it right there. Kids need to stick up for kids.
Yeah.
But also they may have the power of, knowing who to go to when maybe the child that's being bullied isn't comfortable to do that. And surely the bully's not going to go do that. So, the bystander is very important. So, in the middle school that I work in, the kids are always coming down and talking to the school counselor and saying, hey, this is what's going on. I don't think it's right. What should we do? And then we kind of help them out. And one of those things in dealing with the middle school kids is really helping them understand what's the difference between bullying and just regular old conflict, right? Because there's a difference. Not everything is bullying. Because somebody said something mean, maybe not necessarily to you, doesn't mean it's bullying. It might make you feel weird, or you might lose a friendship or something like that, but it's not necessarily bullying. You have to look at, was it intentful? Did they mean to hurt your feelings? Was it repeated? Are they doing it over and over again? Are they trying to make you look bad, or feel bad, whatever it is? But just because it's a conflict doesn't necessarily mean it's bullying. But starting with a school counselor, if something's happening in school, I think is a great place to go, because the school counselor can, connect with the parent and help the parent, because when that child goes home, they're going to need some help. If it's happening in the neighborhood, going to a parent or another trusted adult or coach or something like that, somebody they know that will take action. If it's happening online, again, going to a parent or somebody that they trust. That happens a lot in schools, but going to a parent and saying, hey, look what's going on here. I don't think this is right. How should we handle the situation? Because, I say it all the time, kids have the knowledge to work the technology, but don't always have the wisdom to behave on it.
That's right, yeah.
All right, and so they know how to work it, but when something happens, they're not sure, because they haven't had a long history like we have with wisdom, right, on how to handle those tough situations. We've been through there, we've practiced that as adults, but kids haven't. So they may know how to take selfies and put the filters on there and send group messages, but when something happens, they're not sure how to handle that social situation. We know how to handle social situations, but we need to help learn from them how to use the technology to address it, report it online through whatever the platform's reporting system is, block the person, save the information if it's bullying that might need to go to the next level. But so they'll know how to save that information, but we need to tell them that they need to do that.
Yeah. Now, Ryan, I kind of want to go back to what you said about things that are being perceived as bullying.
Right.
When I was working on this story, I talked with a lot of school districts, and one thing that really stuck out to me, especially with middle school students, that's when a lot of this seems to be happening. They will have maybe a friend and said, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And that obviously hurts. It hurts your feelings. But technically, that's not bullying. But what's interesting, the superintendent told me they have to understand that if that's how the child perceives it, they kind of have to talk to them and understand exactly what bullying is.
Right. Yes, definitely. I think if somebody says if somebody would say to me, I don't want to be your friend anymore, well, that's going to hurt. And I'm going to try to wonder why that's happening, and especially at a young age. And I think that's why we have to talk to them about what bullying is, and the difference between our feelings being hurt from being bullied, which is intentful and hurtful, as opposed to somebody saying, listen, this just isn't working out, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And they generally don't say it that softly, I'm done with you, I don't want to be your friend anymore. And trying to understand that's a different type of hurt, losing a friend compared to being harassed or bullied.
And now we have another question here. This is Angela. Let's see. Is your school district supposedly has no tolerance for they follow? They have what else can you do? So, Angela, with your question, in my reporting of the story, my understanding is that all school districts have a bullying policy, anti-bullying policy, and I believe it does go through the board, the school board, so you can probably address that with the school board too if you have any issues with whether or not things are being followed. Let's see. Do we have any other good questions? So some of these questions are kind of talking about specific schools and stuff like that. That's not our conversation today. Today we're talking about what parents can do to tackle, the mental health aspect, the bullying, the social media, because it really is a prevalent issue. It's something that a lot of parents today didn't have to go through when it comes to social media. There's so many more things out there happening in the world. And again, Ryan, you go to schools and parents are welcome to come and learn about how they can educate their children with social media. You said that you have a contract. Did we show that yet?
No, we didn't. One of the things I found is that we often need a starting point. Whenever we're handing a child a device, or they get a device for a birthday or Christmas or whatever the case is, like there's a contract with a cellular service to use that device and your monthly payment and stuff, but we need a contract with our children on how to use the device. So there's a contract on to have it, but they need a contract on how to use it.
Right.
And I really thought a lot about this because I've seen many different contracts online, and they're pretty. A lot of them were pretty good, but I think they missed what I was really concerned about with the mental health and the emotional part about it, and being a good social friend or responsible digital user, I should say, is that what are those conversations you should have. I do have there's the contracts on the website. It's 2 pages front and back. But I kind of broke it into 2 different sections. The first section is like the conversation you should have with your child first. Kind of like your requirements before you get technology. You're going to get good grades. You're going to be, my favorite one is, you're going to demonstrate that you're a person of integrity. And integrity means doing the right thing even when nobody's watching, right? You have to be showing your integrity, a person with integrity, before you even get this device, right? So if you're not doing that, we're not even talking about this. But if you're a person with integrity, then you're a good start ahead of it. So that's kind of part of the requirements beforehand. And then, the next section is talking about balance. Like before technology, you had balance. You went outside and played with your friends. You played games. You talked to us. You spent time with us. You spent time with your friends. If that balance needs to continue there, you still need to be in your sports or your activities or whatever, and have your friends and still go outside and play with sticks, right? But if that balance starts to disappear because of technology, we're going to reassess this, because everything in life is balance. So that, again, this is part of the conversation. The next part, the section in here, is about what words mean. So what is a definition of a friend? I think Facebook screwed up the word friend for everybody, because you get a friend request. And some of them are friends, some of them are acquaintances, some of them are coworkers, but they're all defined as friends. And I think kids have a hard time with what a friend is and what a follower is, and pulling all that apart. So it defines a little bit about what a friend means. And it also talks about being left out. If you're watching parties go on your Snapchat story that you weren't invited to, that's going to hurt you in a way.
That hurts today.
Right.
Even as an adult, that hurts.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, when we were kids, or when I was a kid, right? If I didn't get invited to a party, I didn't know it.
Right. Yes.
But now when kids don't get invited to a party, but they can see I didn't get invited to that party because look at it going on and all the fun they're having. So it talks about that if you're getting consumed with things you're missing, because you weren't invited through this, we have to back up and adjust that. And then fitting in, this kind of comes into the bullying. You're going to see a lot of things going on with other kids. And, because you have technology now, you can't do things to fit in with the crowd. that are unkind to other kids. Just because other people are doing it doesn't mean it's right. So you're not going to use your technology to be cruel or unkind to other people because everybody else is doing it. So I think that's a key part. And we talked a little bit about the knowledge and wisdom, and then emotional health. That's you have a conversation about emotional health, and this will all walk you through it. What that means, what emotional health looks like, and what it's going to continue to look like with technology. So that's part 1 and 2. Then the last 2 pages of it are like the terms. And on the paper here, I have like a bulleted point. Here's when you're going to be allowed to use it. Here's our contract about it. I'll be responsible for any damage. Here's what my expectations are around it in school. A lot of the, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to use it responsibly. And then at the end, there's a signature sheet for, yourself and your child. You both sign it, hang it on the fridge. There's your contract.
Yeah.
And it can be used as, whenever they're getting a new device, but also it can be a redefinition of terms if they already have a device. So you can use it at any point with your child.
I love that. That's wonderful. And we do have some more questions coming in.
Okay.
So Sarah wants to know, what is the difference between normal social aggression and bullying?
I think that's a tough one because there's just so many different ways that can happen. And I think normal social aggression, I'm not sure exactly what normal would be, but an aggressive act may be a one-time thing, but bullying is going to be intentful, repeated over and over again, maybe changing different forms from in-person to online, going through all these different sources, because it's not often just going to be one platform. It might be a text, it might be Instagram, it might be Snapchat, it might be in person, where I think, social aggressive incident might be somebody gets mad in gym class and does something to somebody else and, was more out of emotion rather than, intent planned out, I'm going to do this to this child.
All right, now our digital producer says Jordan has a question. I can't find it here.
It says, how should a parent approach their child if they suspect something is wrong but the child won't communicate the issue?
Okay, so I'm going to say that again in the microphone. So how should a parent approach a child if they think something is wrong but the child won't communicate the issue?
And that's the tough one. I think that's where a lot of parents get lost because, again, in 5th grade, kids are excited to show you their school and they're talking about school and all that stuff. And by 8th grade, it's starting to shut down a little bit and more teenage behaviors and what's normal because at that age, they're wanting some privacy, and justly so. And we need to give them that privacy. So what is normal behavior of a teenager trying to be a little bit more private, wanting to spend more time with their friends, as opposed to, when there's a problem. And obviously, the first thing you do is you're going to ask. And you want to try to keep those conversations open. Again, try some of the things like, tell me something good that happened. And maybe if they're having a harder time answering those things, that might be an indicator. Or tell me something that felt a little weird at school, and if those things start to go up, you're always taking the temperature of what's going on with your child, and I think those are the key things you have to do, because just because they're being quiet doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong, but you have to look for the other things, like if they're not keeping their room clean, but what I mean, like things things are starting to change, grades are starting to slip. Maybe they're not talking to as many friends as they are. Maybe they're not going out on a Friday night anymore. Maybe they're, some of those behavioral things that could kind of like parallel maybe some emotional changes that would be a little bit more abnormal than just the teenager behaviors.
Yeah, so I'm curious. So what if you have a child who is excited to go to school and acts as if nothing's wrong, but something is wrong? Are there certain signs that you can look for? Is it just that, pounding that communication?
Yeah, I think, again, it comes back to communication, because there are some kids that are going to try to hide it pretty well.
They're good at that at that age.
They are. And one of the things that, I ask a lot of questions when I'm talking to teenagers in particular. And, sometimes I'll ask them questions like, I got to ask you, just because it's part of what I do. And you could frame that as being a parent, is like, I have to ask you, you feeling okay? Are you feeling sad inside because you're looking a little bit different to me? And I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing here. And often when I'm talking to teenagers, if they're feeling sad or they're having some concerning thoughts, after I ask them, what's going on, and they do tell me they're having concerning thoughts about themselves or they're really sad, and I ask them, why haven't you told anybody? And they say, because nobody asked. And and then my next question is, well, why are you telling me? I just kind of met you in school here. And they say, because you asked. right? So it kind of comes down to that sometimes. We have to ask those hard questions, and it's really uncomfortable to ask those questions
Yeah.
sometimes. But
Yeah.
I've heard that more often is like because you asked. So I think it's important that we remember that.
Great. So Joshua has a question. I don't think this is really your expertise,
Okay.
but I may be able to have some answers through my reporting on this. What to do when the bullying becomes physical? What can the child do in a situation when it does become physical? Obviously, avoiding a physical altercation, that's what you want to do. That's the goal, but you can only control your own actions. So once someone assaults you physically, do you lay down and play victim? Or do you defend yourself? Obviously, that's not your expertise, is the physical aspect of that. Through my reporting, I did meet with a local instructor here, and he does not want anyone to get physical. If someone tries to attack you, he wants you to learn how to defend yourself, kind of diffuse the situation, and walk away. Right. And would you say that is the best choice? Absolutely walk away. Even if someone tries, just like get back and walk away.
Yeah, and I think that's because when you start to get involved in this, you're almost turning the power over to them a little bit. But whenever you're trying to walk away, they're losing a little bit of that power. And I know that's hard. And
it's hard to walk away.
It's not hard. It's easy to walk away. But again, this is where I think, those bystanders are very important. And, because that child might have a hard time walking away, or they might have a hard time, if they get caught up in fighting back. But the bystanders are the ones that need to kind of intervene. And so I'm saying that in the fact that we need to teach our children to be that good bystander. We need to teach them, don't let things happen to your friends, stick up for them, because, if there's a child being bullied and a child doing the bullying, but there's 4 or 5 kids around that see that that's wrong, there's more power in those kids standing around there seeing that there's something wrong. So we need to teach our kids to, be that good person and step in.
No, I think that's great answer. Because bystanders, through my reporting too, I also found how important it is for someone to kind of step in and say, like, hey, this isn't cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful. Another good question, this kind of goes back to what that contract that you had, is about the recommended age that kids should have a smartphone. Do you think there is a recommended age, or is it, their mental capacity, but how well you know your kid and whether or not they can handle it?
This is where I hear this a lot, and I don't have the right answer. Every kid matures at a different level. But the other thing, that I talk about in one of my trainings is, a smartphone is not a rite of passage. They don't need it once they hit 13 to grow up, and we all made it to our ages without a smartphone. People have asked, well, what are you going to do with your kids, Mr. Tech guy or whatever? And our current answer is 13, maybe. We're going to see how the grades are going, how mature you are, and but that's only going to get older. I had a 16-year-old I was working with at one point, and he said to me, I'm not allowed to get a cell phone until I get my driver's license. And he was really frustrated by this because all of his friends had cell phones. And so when the time came for him to get his driver's license, I remember him telling me quite eloquently, or, he said with a lot of wisdom, he's like, I'm not sure if I want that cell phone. And I said, why not? And he said, I look around at all my friends and their noses are stuck in it, walking around like zombies, and I don't think I want to turn into that.
Yeah.
So by age 16, he had some wisdom of what he didn't want to turn into. And it's kind of curious, and it's kind of funny. I'm talking to high school kids when I go to high school, and I tell them, I will tell them that I'm talking to elementary school kids with iPhones. And they just kind of look at me and say, why? Why do they have iPhones? And I think it's pretty curious that, high school kids think it's way too early for elementary school kids to have phones. And because they know what they can get into and accidentally stumble upon, accidentally see, and the apps that they're using that are way too old for them. I do have a resource guide on the website that has information about a lot of different apps that kids are using, and like resources and links and privacy settings, how to set all that stuff. So make sure you go on there. But I think it's pretty interesting that the high school kids realize that little kids shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
So, currently our answer is 13 maybe, but it's only going to get older because, I need to see where my kids are at.
Right.
They don't need it to survive. They have Chromebooks at school. They can get their work done there. At our house, we have the old-fashioned landline. If they would need it, they're there. They're not the age to be at home by themselves, but, we're just going to play that. And maybe my daughter's 13, maybe it's my son is 16, maybe it's both 18 for when they get to that point. But part of our rule is, this contract's going to be in there, and you're going to be responsible. But you know what? For our family, you're going to pay for a little bit of it too.
Oh, I like that.
So part of them has to realize that, if you really want to handle this and use this responsibly, a little bit of your chore money or your job, whenever that point comes to, is you're going to pay for this. Not all of it, of course, but you're going to pay for this. So that there's even more, I guess, what's the goal to be responsible with this because it's coming out of my pocket.
Right.
I had a parent one time, she said, we pay for our son's phone, but if he makes a mistake on it, like we take it for a month and he pays for that phone for that month he doesn't have it.
Oh.
And I'm like, ouch, that's gotta
Wow,
hurt.
that does hurt.
And there's some incentive to be good with that phone, isn't
Yes.
there? Yeah.
Wow. All right, so we're about hitting the 30-minute mark. I have another good question, I think,
Sure.
our last question.
Sure.
So how do you help your child overcome verbal and dramatic attitudes at home, school, and social media?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one, right?
I mean, I've got an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, and we're working with that as parents as well. And it comes back to the social emotional part. Like, how would you feel if your teacher talked to you like you just talked to me, or how would you feel if like I spoke to you the way you just spoke to me? Putting it in those terms, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's just that's not going to be tolerated. Like, here's your timeout, or here's your consequence, whatever it is. Like, so there, I think a mesh of both consequences but teaching. There should never be consequences without teaching, and you can teach without consequences depending on the crime, so to speak. But you can teach and have consequences, but you should never have consequences without teaching, if that makes sense.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much,
Sure
Ryan.
thing.
So again, Ryan Klingensmith is with Shape the Sky. Do you want to? Where can people go to find
Okay,
more information?
sure.
You have so many resources available.
There's a lot on there. It took a lot of time trying to get that in place for you. The contract, the app guide. I have a youth spotlight on there where I'm trying to highlight some kids that have done some really cool things. So if there's any kids that anybody knows of that are doing some really cool things in their community or school, shoot me an email and we can get them on the website, because I like to show off kids doing something really good. There's some information about internet challenges and what not to get blown out of proportion about, and what should but it's all shapethesky.org.
Okay, wonderful. All right, and again, thank you guys all so much for tuning in. Keep the conversation going. I'm sure parents can learn from each other too. I'm sure everyone's got some great advice. Keep it kind, and thank you again. Bye.